Hey Damon, it's Jesse. I want to make this video just to get caught up. First things first, try to get some no steps, one steps, and full field goals from the kicking hip side. So, the main thing I want to do, I want to start filling up the case study so I can obviously look at film, but for you, it's important that you understand a couple things. Yes, you're a little bit bigger, but it doesn't matter. Kicking is freaking hard. I'm 6'4", 6'5". If you're a little bit bigger growing in your body, whether you're tall and skinny or a little bit more stout with thicker hips, either way, there's going to be an upper lower half body connection. Both of them, you and me, as I was developing, you can't see your freaking hips. So just like all this anterior pelvic tilt stuff you hear me talk about, you can't see them. So if those hips are tilted forward, by the time you land, you're going to over time, all that pressure is going to tilt your hips even more forward, especially on your plant hip side. So that constant jamming over time, my external rotation is going to be affected, and so you see my plant hip, I can't turn it out as much. That's because my hip has gotten super tight and my leg is internally rotated over time. So over time, you see how, if this is the ball, guys usually have a good plant hip in 10th and 11th grade, then they start going off the ground. It starts going here. What's happening, they're sticking out their butt more and more, and their legs turning in. So kind of like a squat, when that knee goes in, it's called a valgus knee. That's what happens. That's how a lot of ACLs are torn. You start seeing that plant foot go deep, and over time, by the time they get on the ground, their hips are just totally trash. So the most important thing that you have to know is that your plant hip is the most important hip in kicking and punting. So that thing has to have full mobility, because if it doesn't, the right one doesn't have a chance to get full mobility. So as I showed you before, I have super external rotation on my right foot. I kicked and punted, I did them all in the NFL. But because my external rotation is so good, my hip is jacked up. So on my kicking side, I lose my internal rotation. You see how much better my left is than my right. So you can't see your hip sockets, and you can't see your hips, and all that stuff is just jamming. If this is your if this is your pelvis, your tailbone kind of comes down like a triangle. It jams right into those things. But what happens, too much backswing, or sticking our butt out on our kicking side, that repetitive motion, it's gonna loosen up on the right side, it's gonna loosen up, but on the left side, it's just jamming right in there. And because that SI joint gets so jammed, the SI joint's the little ligament between your tailbone and your hips. So this part of your hip is right here that you can feel. It just gets jammed in there and turned, and that's why we just can't get stuck, and we lose our external rotation. So with that being said, I'm going to show you something else in a second, but I just want to let you know two other factors. You guys have been punting in Aussie rules for forever, and so your body gets used to punting, but the ground shows no mercy. There's nothing healthy about kicking a ball off the ground a gazillion times as high and far as you can. That's why guys have so many injuries in kicking. That's why I'm so protective of young guys going off the ground too early. So there's two factors. I've made some posts about this. One, your sacrum, your tailbone, doesn't fuse completely until you're 18. That's a lot. The other thing is your hip flexors. Even if you're a pro soccer player at 20, your hip flexors don't fully mature until you're 20 years old. So I think you're younger than most of the other guys who are just punting. Kicking is much more dangerous because we're doing it with one side and we have to go get it off the ground. So the first thing that goes is our hip, because our hips are unstable the younger we are. So we got to be super careful, and I'll show you just some little tips about the one and no step, what we're looking out for with bigger bodies. Because the whole point of this thing, we're trying to make you the perfect athletic version of yourself. So we want you to grow proportionally strong. But if the hips don't start out in the right spot, it's going to take much longer for the rib to hip separation in the upper body to connect to the lower body, okay? All right, so now that we got that out of the way, remember, it's just a development thing. Doesn't matter what your body looks like. It's just this stuff is so hard on our hips, So, somebody's comment. There you go. So the reason why this stuff is so important, because however people line up in the one step, the lineup always looks good, but you can't see under the shirt. You can't see if somebody's balanced or grounded or not. So there's no way to tell from the stance You just got to see the body move through the ball. But what happens is, if you notice, let's just say this is the ball. What happens, a lot of these guys start the one step, and by the time they kick the ball, watch my plant foot, see my heel come up before. So a lot of times their heel comes up right before they make contact, and all your power's in your butt. So we want that heel touching the ground until we make contact, then we're pushing up off our toe and transferring through. So the no step is the single most important drill because one, it takes care of your plant hip. Two, it works on your jump mechanics, which means this is functional movement, vertical shin, heel to toe, kick, and pushing up and over, okay? So that's why the no step is so important. And it's the same thing with the one step. Just because I look grounded doesn't mean I am grounded. When I'm grounded, it should almost mean like somebody's pulling my shirt and I'm getting low and pulling them forward. That means I have a little stretch in my left hip flexor in my one step. The whole goal to having square neutral hips is so I can create torque off this back foot, then of course the kicking foot as I'm going into my one step, okay? And there's a ton of no step and one step videos, but sometimes it's just good to see. So a lot of times guys will be in their stance, it'll look like they're balanced, but they literally have no pressure on this front foot. So they'll be right here, but they're basically jumping off this back foot. And so because you're jumping off this back foot, you're basically just touching this kicking foot to the ground and landing. That's not what we want. We want to create torque off our back foot, our front foot. The more vertical shin, the more we can use our butt and our hip to kind of scoot, and you'll feel your butt work, and then we can jump through the kick, okay? So that's the way it works, okay? So I just want to help you be super overprotective of your body. You know, connecting the upper body takes time. And when we're growing into our body, it's not overnight, but we need to get our hips in the right spot first, then we'll work on the upper body connection. That's exactly what this website's all about. So I'm gonna put these videos together, send them in a YouTube link, and there you go. Get those, watch the no step videos, and let's get some 2 or 3 no steps from kicking hip side, maybe from the front, one steps and field goals, and then, you know, kickoffs is the last thing. The source to the kickoffs is the no step. It's the single most important drill. Also, another simple drill, like a lot of times, you know, we just forget how to jump over time because we're kicking. Like some simple one-handed layups, right-handed, touch the backboard, left-handed, just getting our jump mechanics back, because once those hips kind of stick out, our hips don't transfer as we go through the ball. So we get used to jumping and landing rather than jumping out and up. And that means our hips stay neutral as we go up and do a layup with our left hand, layup with our right hand. So amazingly enough, for kicking and punting, layup basketball drills are like one of my favorite drills. And you just stick those headphones on, 10 minutes both feet, and that's it.